And for the first speech of opposition, I invite Mariam.
So before moving into our model, we would like to offer a short rebuttal, specifically on 3 mistakes that team proposition made. First, in saying that there was no improvement of living conditions in third world countries. Second, that they would encourage countries to decrease the corruption in their governments. And 3, that there has been no economic growth in any third world country, claiming that debt spirals are the only alternative. This, ladies and gentlemen, is fear-mongering. Now, let's go back to the first point that they said, no improvement of living conditions in third world countries, when, in fact, the world population below the poverty line is at a historic low, at 7% less than it was in just the last 10 years. That is a fact. Second, to encourage governments to decrease the corruption in their countries. How can one ask a corrupt government to decrease the corruption? This does not make sense to team opposition, because yes, there are international programs that help decrease corruption, but you cannot simply ask a government to decrease its corruption. That is not how the world works. And the third, that there has been no economic growth in any country. Again, saying that debt spirals are the only alternative. This is false. Now let's move into team opposition's models. So we support the increased safety of in form of aids, and we believe that compensation of past injustices must be done through reparations and debt transfers, such as debts taken under a dictatorship. We stand for those who have been unfairly and unjustly represented, and that is what my second speaker will talk about. But we would like to propose 2 alternatives that have been widely overlooked by team proposition, and that is the option of debt transfers and the option of the debt postponement. These 2 options, one of which has actually been used by the IMF in the case of Ghana. Ghana had taken loans from England and that it could not repay. So what their solution was to, instead of canceling the debt, which would be unfair to England, seeing as they did rightly and legally lend this money under a proper government, what the IMF did was they teamed up with UNICEF, and Ghana paid a small portion of their debts to IMF, and in return, England received tax cuts. This is a win-win situation, and ladies and gentlemen, team opposition is for a win-win situation. Now, on to what my second speaker will say. She will discuss how team proposition's plan will reduce the amount of money available in third world countries, and she would also discuss the issue of accountability or lack thereof in governments in third world countries. On to my first argument. Loans to the third world have contributed significantly to the fight against poverty. So, again, the world population is at a historic low since 1981. 44% of the population lived in poverty in 1981, and today, in 2013, 11% of the population of the world lives below poverty. Now, how is this relevant to tax cuts? How is this relevant to debt? Because these third world countries survived poverty, overcame poverty through the debts they took from various European nations and the United States. So, third world countries are poor. We are not disputing that. That is not what they are in trouble. But there are several occasions that must be taken into consideration that team proposition is completely and blatantly ignoring. For example, the majority of African third world countries that are now in debt, that are now dangerously in debt, were indebted by governments that were not legal, indebted by dictatorships, indebted by non-elected officials. Now, team proposition in this debate cannot ignore the very dangerous implications of canceling debt, because we do not live in their fantasy world. We do not live in a world where two countries can blatantly ignore past commitments that they have made with their allies, because in the world of diplomacy, allies are not guaranteed to stay your allies forever, which is again what my second speaker will. Yes.
Most actual loans that are given to these countries do not come from individual countries, they come from the International Monetary Fund because of the interest rate being really, really high from these countries.
Though there was no question, I will respond. So, in response to this, yes, many loans come from various organizations such as IMF. But we're here today to discuss not only debts coming from IMF, but international debts that these countries need help with. Now, team opposition has clearly demonstrated that there are several alternatives to the dangerous alternative that team proposition is suggesting. Because let's look at the second option that team opposition is suggesting, which might seem to be a more convenient alternative for what the speaker is requesting. Debt postponement. Now, let me explain something about debt. Debt, when internationally, acquires interest over time, and this is what damns these countries. This is what makes these countries so impoverished that they can't pay for, as team proposition said, for education or healthcare programs. But debt postponement would solve this and provide a win-win opportunity. What would happen in this scenario is that countries will offset their debt, that the interest will freeze, that the debt will no longer acquire interest, and they will pay the amount that they are indebted once they are capable. Now, this opportunity is the perfect opportunity for third world countries who are in dire need of help, because for organizations such as the IMF, who do need to return their funds, they will receive the money that they are owed. But the third world countries will not be handicapped by paying it back. Now, what team proposition is suggesting, in conclusion, is very dangerous. Why? Because these debts, over time, it will set a precedent for canceling debt. Because money does not grow on trees. Money has to be paid back at some point. And if the majority of all third world countries' debt are canceled, then that'll set up the next country to cancel their debt, and the next country to cancel their debt. And then the IMF will not receive any money in return. A debt is a debt for a reason, and that is why team proposition respects this, and the team opposition should win.